Hi everyone, I'm Arjun, the co-founder and CEO of Betafi. We are building your user research sidekick to make the process of user research joyful, and then hopefully the post process is impactful. We are actually just launching our product publicly today on Product Hunt, so please show us some love there as well. The link is right there for everyone to see. Um, and during the talk, feel free to ask any questions that you might have. I'll be talking about uh, how, while we were building Betafy over the past year and a half, how user research and gut both played critical roles in getting us where we are today. So excited to get started and share some of my perspective. So a little bit about me. So right now I'm leading Betafi, and before that I was working at Singtel, which is a telecom company in Singapore. And I had a lot of my early experiences on the importance of getting user feedback and bringing in that feedback at Singtel. I'm extremely passionate about user conversations and research. And while building Betafi, we did over 300 interviews with different users, and the result is an amalgamation of that experience. So before we go into the Betafy story, let me share three stories from my life which really put it into me that user research or talking to customers is really important. So first was when I was right out of school, in my first job in Singtel. I was wanting to do as a young person. I want to be in strategy or marketing, but I was put in operations in customer service, right? And as a young person, you always think, oh, why is customer service so difficult? Uh, why can't I just get the hold of it? Why can't you just get to a call agent in a telco, right? And I would assume that, oh, people may not be skilled. But when I just joined the role and my boss literally put me in the call center, so I was just sitting right next to the agents, observing how they do. It first dawned on me that it's not so much about skill or even handling the customer, but they're handling 4 to 5 systems at one go. So as you talk to the agent, poor agents are juggling 5 systems. And the first day on the job was just eye opening, that literally I could see while they're talking to the customer and talking to 5 people. That's just insane. Like major props to them. Um, and so while I was working with them, naturally being a young person, I was like, why not build a new product for them? So as part of my one of my first few projects, I built a product with a vendor with the call agents. But it was pretty funny because since I was in the call center, I was close to them. Every 2 or 3 days we would just go and show them the product, see how they use it, and we would get decent feedback, right? I thought that was the norm. Apparently not. So this was one of the first times that they had been brought into the center of product development, and they were very happy to give feedback. As a result, when we actually launched this tool live for the agents, right, we have this concept of learning and development where they are taught how to use a new tool, and the typical day for them or time taken for that is almost like half a day out of the operation to learn a new tool. But they learned Betafy, sorry, not Betafy, it was called another tool, Neometrics. They learned that in 30 minutes. It was so funny that the learning team didn't know what to do with the rest of the half day that they had scheduled to learn a new tool. That was my first cool story and first experience of bringing user into developing the product and how that creates magic. My second story was, so I graduated from customer care, learned a lot, moved to marketing. And in marketing, I was a little bit bored. So I was like, as a side project, let me start something for younger folks. Singtel was definitely a company that does very well with the family segment. So, of course, I wanted to build for the young segment, right? Uh, so, this was not an official project. So, it was just 2 or 3 of us who were working together, and as we were working together, since there were no rules and nobody really gave us permission to build it, we did a lot of user research on the smallest of things. Of course, I did not know it was called user research. I just thought talk to customers and get feedback. So everybody wanted to build a 1995 plan or 1999 plan. I was like, nope. I want to build 20 for 20 for 200 and 200. Like I want to hammer simplicity into the customer's head, right? And we actually tested it. We gave them 90, 95, and 20, but 20 with all the minutes and SMSs the same, and they loved that plan. So that was where I was right, and user research validated me. As you can see, the funny cartoon on the slide, Gomo had a very distinct brand from Singtel, and I was very personally very keen to keep the brand separate from Singtel. So just call it Gomo, not Gomo by Singtel. Again, instead of just making my personal opinion as the default, I went and got feedback on this, got A/B testing, and Gomo by Singtel was way more preferred, right? And I couldn't believe it because, of course, I wanted it to be without the Singtel as the dominant answer. But the user insight there was, because Gomo is still a telco plan, and having that Singtel creates that strong association. So Gomo by Singtel would just have the cool factor of a new product with the trust factor of a stable network. And that was the second aha moment while building Gomo. The third was the third was what I would say, where we saved ourselves from the corporate echo chamber. So in Singtel, we used to call Gomo as Singtel's all digital plan. And we were almost about to take out ads which said Gomo, Singtel's all digital plan. And then we did user surveys, and people were like, we don't care what all digital means. It is just supposed to work on digital. So that's when we realized, okay, don't be smart. Just put the price and GB because it's competitive. Don't go and show to customers what you internally refer while building Gomo. So this Gomo was my second story or key realization on the point of importance of user research. The third, so I do have a life outside of work. So my third story is um, from cricket. So cricket is a sport that's played in the subcontinent, right? And they have a lot of different types of games. One of them lasts as long as 5 days, believe it or not, right? But there used to be a 5 day game, and there used to be a 1 day game, right? Which always existed. And then recently there's like a T20 game, and T20 game has just exploded, right? So I was very intrigued, like who actually thought of it, like who was smart enough to shorten the game, because that reduces ad revenues initially, right? And the insight behind that is, because a 1 day game is like not good enough for most people's attention span. Where people really focus on the game are the first 15 overs and the last 5 overs, right? So the middle 30 overs is where people drone out, and they don't really follow. Um, so they're like, why not we just reduce that 50 over game to a 20 over game and just get people what they want, which is to focus on those 20 overs, right? I was amazed at somebody having that kind of user insight. So that was my third key experience of where user conversations could be extremely helpful. So I will pause. I already have opened a poll. I will just show it on stage for a minute. So if you could, this is my the top title of my talk, right? What matters more in an early stage startup, user research or gut? So I can see user research is winning quite handsomely. Can some people vote gut for the sickness of a fair argument, even if it's not true? I'm kidding. Yeah. So keep voting. I will keep bringing it on the stage from time to time and share my personal perspective. So before we move forward, here on out, I will be sharing the story of Betafi, basically the last 1.5 years coming to the product launch today, and how in different stages of the product we have had to juggle between user research and gut, and how it has transpired for us, right? And would love to take some questions after that. So let's start with the very, very early days of Beta 5, and we're just getting started, right? So at the very early stage, honestly, user research was like the heart and soul of Beta 5. And I view user research pretty broadly. It includes talking to customers, right? Of course, we spoke to over 300 users, including companies in India, Singapore, US. We also had our own personal experience very intimately. We appreciate the problem, as I have just shared, and we also spent a lot of time studying competitors and what was already in the market, right? We were not like the first person ever to think of a product in this category. So we were curious on what is already out there and what's missing. And we spent a lot of time when we were just getting started on this. From talking to users, we quickly realized that participant recruitment is a big problem. Synthesis of information is another big problem. And user research is perceived as this luxury that sits on slide decks, not necessarily something you can do in a quick and fast way, the way I could do in Gomo. And that was what we initially set out to change, right? And then um, so as we spoke to users, and at this stage, really talking to users was a big part of what I personally did as my co-founder was coding out the product. The two key things was that it is perceived as a luxury. It is something you do when you have a massive project, a big launch coming, right? Or something that is needle moving. It is not something day to day. It's not like software testing. Do you ever not do software testing? Rarely, right? So that was the first insight. The second thing was even when it's done, and this is something I saw in my own experience as well, it just sits on reports. Like people go out there, do the hard work of 2 months of doing good UXR, and then it's not really action into the product development process. And this was something very thematically something that came up again and again as we spoke to more and more folks, right? So here I'm showing you actual examples of our very early product. So after talking to customers and understanding the needs, we realized that at that time COVID had just happened. People were just suddenly scrambling to do away from in-person UXR to online UXR. Everyone was using Zoom. They were using screen sharing with Figma. They were even taking notes in different documents. So information was like all over the place. So my co-founder Ethan built the very early version of the prototype, where you can take notes, talk to users in one place, and also share your Figma prototypes. So the image on the top right is our very first version of the product, and this was something as we built every day, we would test with users, we would get quick feedback. The other interesting thing was, which the other screenshot shows, is people didn't want to jump to different tools or alt tab to refer to the interview questions. So we were like, okay, why not we bring in the interview questions onto the tool itself, right? So we built that. We thought it's pretty cool. Not a single person understood what that what that play button meant, right? So when we demoed, it was like, oh, that's a cool feature. And when we asked them to use it, they have like not a single clue. So but this was also great because just from talking to a few users, we could uncover this was a big problem, and we could go about and fixing it. Overall, in this early phase, and what I constitute as early phase is like getting clarity on what problem statement you're working on, and then building a very early bare bones kind of prototype product, which you can show to people to validate the idea. Um, I would say UX research was pretty good for us. We, confident as we may be, stayed away from intuition or gut at this stage of the product journey, um, so that we could get feedback from real customers, right? Uh, these are other examples of early product as well. So we launched our first ever post session experience. We were so excited about having the video player on top of the transcript, and people were like, again, do not understand what the hell that means. So we were very, it was very obvious that this is not good, so you need to go and improve it. Right? Like the feedback was always very clear. There was no need for gut, right? This was our early examples of integration of Figma and Adobe XD. We built it quite close to each other, very early days, just me and my co-founder, and most of the folks were like telling us, "Oh, this is pretty sick, right? This is pretty good." But again, very early when we showed this to them, they were like, "Yeah, but this is good, but we have to also show uh, how we can do this on a mobile prototype." So that's why we built like a hybrid experience in the early days. But again, feedback here was nice. So the right hand side is a improved version of the left hand side. So first screen is very early, and the right screen is still a little bit early, where we improve the live session experience. Most of this was based on very direct feedback, where video and transcript, video and notes need to be together. This was the core insight, and this was something that came through consistently. Again, here, talking to users felt great because a lot of times we were doing demos, we were showing the product. Oftentimes, the product was not in a shape where you could even let people self help and use it. So it was like me or my co founder sharing the product, understanding what the feedback was. And oftentimes, the feedback was pretty accurate. So in this phase of the product journey where I would say it's just me and my co founder, I would just say user research was like the dominant thing in building Betafi, right? Okay, so like just to summarize why it was important for us when we were getting started to bank more on research than gut. First starts with both me as an ex PM and my co-founder as an ex engineer are not user researchers to begin with. So we needed to have that humility to go and understand what is another person's workflow and really go down and understand it. The second thing which we understood very quickly was that user research is still a pretty nascent field, especially in Asia. A lot of the best practices were still emerging as we spoke. So, and a lot of the processes were not consistent. So it made sense to speak to as many people as possible. The third a very interesting thing was that while we were working, we started the company when COVID had happened, maybe 6 months after COVID happened. And during that time, the user research landscape of the whole world totally changed. Everybody was just figuring at the same time how to do these interviews online. And this presented a very unique opportunity for us to like figure out how people were doing things, right? The fourth thing was if you're building a user research product, you better do user research yourself, right? Like walk the talk. So it's during the process of talking to users, collecting notes, bringing notes together, sharing insights with each other. We also started to build like a deeper understanding of why user research is critical, right? So not just in terms of talking to users and asking, oh, what's your top three challenges, but also discovering for yourself why the hell is everyone struggling with synthesis. It's really hard even in a two people setup. So imagine when we scale Betafy, right? And lastly and most importantly, I think just generalizing this, it's also very important to intimately appreciate where was the addressable gap in the market, where the different tools were not making the use case or there was not enough distribution. So it's time for us to come in, right? So TLDR, early product user research good, right? That's how I would put it, right? And just for fairness, I will also share about where we deviated a little bit on depending too much on user research. So early stage of the product, we are figuring out what we are doing. Then we kind of figured out which direction we are going. We also had a bare bone prototype which we shared with folks. We started getting feedback, and by this point in time, like user feedback was very central to the ethos of Betafy. So we started talking to users for every single thing and trying to understand what their feedback was. So a lot of people shared that, hey, we love analyzing notes and bucketing them in categories or themes, right? That's very fair. When you're doing qualitative conversations, you want to bucket things. So we built our own Kanban board, right? Which like was awesome in my opinion, in our opinion. Sorry, right? And then when we started to monitor the analytics, we were like, why is no one using it, right? And and the moment we delved into that, right, the key answer was people didn't want a new Kanban. They just wanted Miro. And you know, Miro took years and years to build, and building a Miro within Betafy is not like the smartest thing to do. So this was one example where we just went with what people were saying, exactly how they were saying, and we will build and solve your problem. But in this case, it backfired on us because you are not thinking deep enough about the problem. You're not appreciating why they like Miro for certain things. What are the minor features about Miro, and kind of appreciating that it's not so easy to build for an entirely new company, right? Another example was oversharing the post session experience. So we built the post session experience I had shown you earlier, and people are starting to like it. And you know, at the early stage when people like it, it's so rare. We're like, yeah, right. Let's double down on it. So one of the very common feedback was, oh, your video annotation and transcript is amazing. How can I share it with my team? Right? Agencies were telling us they need to show proof of work. So we were like, cool, let's build the share button, right? So we allowed the entire post session to be shareable as a public link, so that it's easy for people to learn from each other and learn from the user conversations. That was our thesis. But what we realized very quickly, that entire session was like, sharing the entire session was not tenable. Initially, we thought it's because of data privacy concerns, which was also true. But the bigger concern was, even the user researchers themselves were not comfortable with sharing every single thing. They wanted to share distilled and concise things, which was not the same as sharing every single thing. So again, we had interpreted it wrongly. In this case, our gut did tell us that, wouldn't there be privacy concerns? I think we should have just gone with a gut here. It was the easier answer. And though in this case, unlike the previous case, we didn't have to scrap it, but it was a significant amount of work with not a lot of like return on investment for it, right? We have another example of this. The third example, and this is probably the most interesting. So Betafi, right, as at its core, is a user research platform where you talk to the users, capture their feedback, take notes, and so on, right? Take notes and so on are where we are strong, but the actual video tool, where you can talk to the users over Betafi, this we built our own video tool, and as a 2% company, that was quite an ambitious ordeal. So as we started rolling out and people started liking our features, what we realized was, people have very, very high bar for a video tool. By that time, Google Meet and Zoom were extremely mature. People knew what they wanted. They wanted screen share for moderator, screen share for participant, seamlessly talking to multiple people, right? And the bugs never ended. There were 2 months where every day all we were doing was solving bugs, which we had to. As a startup, that's your job, to solidify a product. But we didn't step back to think that, hey, actually building Zoom is pretty hard, right? It's pretty damn hard. It's a massive company, and you can't just go and build some tool to the same level of fidelity that quickly. So we added like tons of features into our video tool, and though it has its strengths as well, but this is another example of getting into the weeds a bit too much, going taking things at face value, and not like stepping back and really thinking there could be a smarter way to solve the problem, right? And which we did. Like, our Zoom integration was the solution, where we just integrated with Zoom. Let Zoom handle the video. We will do the cool note taking and the aha moment and the usability testing, right? But this was an eye-opening experience as well. This was that 6 to 8 month messy middle, as I would call it, where we learned the most. We grew so much as a company, and we also realized that you have to balance user research with a larger context, with a gut, and it's a combination of those two things that uh, help you grow as a startup, right? So one more time, is, are we still sold on user research? Looks like most people had already voted before. uh, okay, cool. I will open this one more time, so if anyone has not voted, go ahead and vote, and let's continue the talk. Cool. So then is the last part about building towards launch, right? And this is the part where I would say the last 3 to 4 months have been, where there have been some early signs that Betafi is starting to show promise, but yet we are still working. And I feel this is a stage where both gut and user research is sort of helping us. And let me explain why, right? Whereas in the messy middle, we had not built enough of our product for people to really use it properly and like imagine it in the real world projects to be able to give us that feedback. By this closer to launch stage, enough modules in the product were ready, where user feedback often was pointing in the right direction. So the first example was, we have been speaking about the post session experience. We had done the oversharing, which was not smart, right? So here was just build clips. Clips was something everybody said. For the longest time we were thinking, but doesn't all the tools have clips? Why do we need another clips? But after a while, okay, we were like, okay, let's just build it. We already have the sharing thing, right? It's a quick turnaround for us. And this was the first sign. The moment you build clips, usability testing on Betafi becomes useful, which is kind of interesting. Usability testing existed on Betafi for a long time, but by having the ability to clip those videos, show those participant struggles, you could easily show this to a lot of other people as well, and that leads ironically more people to use your tool instead of less people, right? The second thing was like I was saying in the first second phase, being a bit too focused on user research. One of the big calls we did after 2 months of big bug bashing, after bug bashing on a video tool, was like, okay, Zoom has this new marketplace offering. We'll find a way to integrate ourselves on Zoom, whatever it takes, however long it takes. It took us 6 or 7 months, so it took us really long time, a lot of engineering resources, a lot of like admin work as well. But this was a pure call on gut that, hey, if we just keep solving all those tech issues, it will take us forever. Why not we build the magic of Betafi on top of Zoom and let's see how it goes. So it took us 7 months to do it and a lot of faith. But the moment we launched it, the organic usage on the product grew like instantly. So this was one good example where gut can help you as well. Okay, so what are the big takeaways in this user research versus gut debate, right? Um, I think if I were to summarize this talk or really distill it, I would say for us in the early days, UXR was the more dominant framework of decision making. In the messy middle, we should have contextualized things more, gone with gut. And in the near launch phase, it's a combination of both. But I want to talk about two other big pointers in this conversation of building a SaaS company or a SaaS product, that is important as well. So the first one was the importance of getting embedded into workflows. A lot of times when you're building a new product and you want to solve everything, you want to change the whole world, you don't stop to think how much of a new learning curve it increases in the user. And maybe we also didn't do a good enough job on having more uh, pressing questions, asking our people even harder on what are the changes they would need to make to use Betafi as their default for user research, right? We went with, oh, the instant tag is good, the mobile usability is good, which it was, but it's good versus how much new work is it for the participant, or how much work does my user researcher need to do to convince the higher ups to build this tool as a default, right? That was the first key thing, right? So a lot of cool things happened when we did the Zoom integration, when we did the Miro integration. Frankly, because Zoom and Miro were great tools, but even more importantly, right, it's because that those tools help Betafy work with their workflow. They were already people are already analyzing things on Miro, so help them get your notes out to Miro, right? People are already doing video calls on Zoom. Imagine how much more confident your participant would be if they don't have to install a new tool, right? So that was a very eye opening experience. And conversely, if you want to make them do a lot of changes in their workflow and adapt a new tool, then the value has to be that much higher, right? So in the last like couple of months, we have built a usability dashboard where you can get analytics after usability calls. But all of that is needed because you're making a participant install new things, because you're making your moderator do things. The bar for what you have to provide value for, because you're doing more work, is important. The second thing, and I think this is like the new ethos of Verify, is all about dog fooding your product, dog fooding your process. Even in the messy middle, like I said, where UXR and we were kind of deviating from our core premise, dog fooding was one thing that always kept us centered. Like it showed us that, hey, users are really struggling. We ourselves are struggling while using those video tools, and it's not such an easy process. And that was what kept us going, that we need to always understand how people uh, do synthesis. We need to understand how people share insights between the new team. The other cool thing about dog fooding is it helps you uncover extremely new things you could build which you would have never thought of before. For example, one of our module which is not live yet is about just doing incremental synthesis. As insights emerge, let's start categorizing it, right? And don't wait till like an insights report is done at the end. And that was born purely out of what we observed was, as you talk to more and more users, you get more and more insights, and capturing patterns across those insights is very hard, even with Miro, even with a tag thing, right? So that is some problem we are trying to solve. But this problem actually, this thing actually came out of uh, us always using our product, being on top of the issues, the user issues, and so on. Yeah. So that was all that I have. I will keep the talk short, but I do have one surprise for you. So I had shown parts of the Betafi story in my talk, but we've also built like a Miro board where we show this in detail of how the product evolved. So if folks are interested, go and check it out. And I would love to take questions if there are any questions. Cool. Uh, should we just start with questions that are in the chat? Okay. Let's say you combine quality and quality saying outcome is. Yeah, so I think this is a question for me personally. Once I make that decision to do a research project, or when once I'm committed to testing out an idea, I definitely would not then go back to like that and like just undo it. Then what was the purpose of doing that research? So me personally would trust the research process. Having said that, I would put a lot of thought behind what folks are saying and what they mean and what is the bigger ecosystem under which they operate. And same with data, right? Like what is data showing, how was it captured, and so on. But I would, if I have committed to going out and doing research, I would go ahead and stick to it then. Yep. Cool. What's the next question? You think that it's got that does UX research always win out? um, so in our case, as I said, the messy middle was where got one more. But I would say, if I were to extrapolate it in a product's journey, especially in the 0 to 1 journey, I would say the gut is important more when you're at a stage when you have validated the problem statement, because users are good at explaining problems, but you have not built enough of the product for people to give a qualified opinion. So you could have built like a basic prototype or Figma file. But if the user can't easily visualize what this means and what this means for their workflow, and they're going to get too anchored by one thing, I would be careful about using UX research then. I think it's not that don't do it, but keep like a gut check with it. Like think of the bigger picture, step back. That would be one instance where I would say you have validated your problem, but you have not built enough of your product where people can really use it and give feedback. That stage I would depend more on gut. Oh, good question. Um, so the honest answer is as many as I can. But practically speaking, I do at least 5 to 6 sessions until insights start to converge. So if I do 5 6 sessions and folks are confused about the same thing, I would stop there. But if the insights are not converging, people are saying different things, then I might continue doing more sessions. Yeah. Yeah, this is a hard question. So in my Singtel example, how I used to do it is I would just do the research myself and show the value of it. Like just do it first and then show what the users are saying, um, and people were convinced. But I think the more smarter way to do this is, a lot of times these benchmarking reports are super high level. For example, they would say, oh, telco needs to address younger people, right? Okay, no shit, how? Right? If you grill a little bit deeper on the how or the why, or what was the exact insight why we're chasing, the benchmarking reports in my experience rarely address that. So that would be one good way to uh, uh, like push the case for research. Uh, I think because in Betafy, from the time when we started the company, we have been very research focused, and in hiring, we often prioritize folks across all roles who are very user centric. So honestly, this has not been hard for us. People do in Betafy, all the teammates, I'm happy to share, do take user issues very very seriously. What has been more of a learning curve is because we are eng heavy company, sometimes we get sucked into building the cool shit, right? And that has been something we have to be careful about, because cool shit can suck up a lot of bandwidth as well. So it's not so much the issues versus features, but it's the issues versus features versus impact of the features that I think about more. Yes, I love this question. So this was something I wanted to talk about as well. That I would break it into two, right? So near our launch, after having done this product for the last 1.5 odd years, yes, I do think refresh the experience is helping us get a better gut feel for sure. But what I meant in the gut versus experience debate is when you don't even have that experience yet, is it's kind of trust your other world experience as well. Like for that specific problem, maybe you're not that experienced yet, but you can think in bigger words that people are not. There's always a learning curve for new tools, or like COVID changes this for folks. So that's where I meant that that gut is also based on experience, but experience not necessarily coming from that exact problem space. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, so for us, the testing is always an ongoing process. So we break it into testing that we are doing iteratively. So what we did in Betafy is this concept of reverse demos. So where we, let's say, meet a customer, we demo the product. After that, we realize it's equally important to ensure they're on the product, to let them use the product in front of you. That serves as our first usability testing process. And then whenever we launch a new feature, which someone would care about. So let's say if someone is a usability testing customer, we'll reach back to them. If someone is a user interview customer, we'll reach back to them. If there's a big impact to workflow or a big feature, we'll also reach back. But again, I would caveat it. We are still an early product, which we are still building, and workflows is super critical to us. So that's why the frequency of testing is very, very high. But we don't always go to new users as well, because you have to be focused in what you're asking. At the start, it could be, okay, tell me how Betafy feels. But after a while, it could be, tell me how mobile usability on Betafy feels, right? So we end up going to the same customer who cares about a certain feature many, many times. Yeah, awesome, awesome question. You sound like my venture capitalist. But I think very, very quickly, it is about the thesis we have is make the live session experience so easy for you to capture uh, all the key moments in the conversation, whether it's user interview or usability testing, and then use that capture of information in the post session experience to pick up trends a lot faster. We feel a lot of the other tools either focus a lot on live session or on post session, but if you do the two of them together, then magic happens, in my opinion. Yeah. So Mr. Utkarsh is telling me we are almost at time. So it was a pleasure speaking here. I am very passionate about sharing it. So please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Please support our launch or product hunt. We also have a booth on BeMore. So just come there and hang, and we can continue the conversation if I have not covered any questions. So thanks so much. Really appreciate the questions, and it was genuinely a pleasure speaking to all of you.